address, I guess, some of the concerns. Am I correct at that? Okay, so Senator Morrison, you're recognized.
Good morning, Madam Speaker.
Good morning.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, over the time we had yesterday, I appreciate the concerns of my colleagues, and although we were trying to get some information across and trying to work through some of the language here, I understand clearly that I still had to vet some of the concerns before the Guam Fire Chief, and we were able to make contact with him off island to ensure, as information was provided by the chairman of this committee, Senator Tom Matta. So we were able to get a clearance and understanding from the fire chief that this language would work as well, and I understand the concerns of my colleagues as well with tapping further the E911 fund, emergency reporting fund. So I have an amendment, Madam Speaker, before us that I believe would work. I spoke with the chairman again, and this is the language that he also too feels that would work. So, Madam Speaker, it's I think everybody has a copy. Does everybody have a copy of the?
Senators, please make sure that you do have a copy.
So, the amendment reads on Section 1 of the bill is hereby renumbered as a new Section number 2, and a new Section 1 is hereby added to read under Section 1. As we could state, Madam Speaker, the language in current statute under the subsection 12304, the creation of the special fund, the new language, Madam Speaker, will be providing this new authorized item, as you can see on the underline after hardware/software, to include video cameras, video security cameras, and related equipment, supplies, installation, and maintenance of services. So, if you want, I could also read the whole amendment, but I'm saying this is existing language. We're basically allowing for a new authorized item that would tie into the operations of the 911 system.
Okay,
Again,
so
also to address some of the current concerns, Madam Speaker, it further goes on as in current language. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, no monies in the fund shall be expended without the appropriation by legislature purposes other than provided for this section. So that's in there, Madam Speaker, to address also the other concerns regarding the fund. I believe a colleague here who will also be moving to address some of the other items there regarding the portions of the fund language in there. So that's the amendment, Madam Speaker.
thank you. Everyone is able then to follow that this will be the new Section 1 for the creation of a special fund. And so is there anyone who would like to speak on this amendment? Senator Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I certainly rise in support of this amendment. And basically what this does is it just expands the what the 911 funds can be used for. But what gives me comfort is, so we've done that by now including the purchase or the procurement of video security cameras and related equipment, supplies, installation, and all that. But then ultimately further down it says that before a penny is spent for video cameras or for 911 system and whatever else, it has to come down to the legislature for scrutiny before for the money to be appropriated. So certainly in line with the bill, where they're looking at the various public safety agencies to get together and to develop a plan as to how to integrate these video cameras into the network, and then after they've done that, then they'll be able to really be able to quantify the cost of being able to realize this enhancement. And so I certainly would rise in support of this. The second, but however, I do have a question of the author in that in proffering this amendment, I guess what happens to the, should we say, the controversial clause that we were looking at yesterday that spoke about the procurement of video. By proffering this, I think that addresses the concerns that were raised, but now we need to go to that section of the bill to delete, I think it was section lines 5 through 10, in order to basically then bring this whole thing to a balance. And so, you're going to do that? Okay. All right. So I understand my colleague.
Okay.
The last item I just want to say, Madam Speaker, is I certainly want to commend the mover of the amendment. I think it says a lot. He's no longer a freshman senator because he's already had one term under his belt. But the fact that he was willing to compromise, to be able to get everybody on board, I think says a lot about his ability as a policymaker to be able to see that his view is not the only view that exists, and was willing to step back and take a look at the concerns that others were raising, and then actually be open-minded enough to be able to then introduce a compromise, which really is just a matter of form, and I don't think it takes away anything from what he was wanting to do. So I certainly commend him for stepping forward, because certainly the position he was taking yesterday was very much, steadfast. No way, you're not going to change it. And he has, but he has done that, but was able to make it a win-win situation for everyone. And I certainly commend him for that. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Senator. So I guess this would be graduation for our senator. So congratulations. So on the amendment, Senator Nicholas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, for formalities, I would like to officially withdraw.
Oh, before we, okay. I was going to do that on your regular, but if you're going to speak on the amendment, and then I'll get to you.
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
I forgot the main motion.
Okay.
I'll wait.
So on the amendment, then, Mr. Vice Speaker.
Just for clarification, Madam Speaker, do I understand that what is currently on the bill that was, the amended bill that was circulated, 73, there's a new Section 1, and what we have in Section 1 in the bill is still going to remain?
It'll be, renumbered then to 2. And then my understanding, I know we're kind of doing this backwards, but then my understanding is that Senator Nicholas will go back to that old one section to make the change, so it would not be in conflict with his new section.
But the Section 1 that's here in the bill itself is 12302 with all of the strike-throughs.
Yes. So what this would do then is that it will now, the language, you're right, is like bringing it back, putting it back in. Because I'm reading it and the language is the same. It was stricken out, but now it's going to be put back in.
And there'll still be a new 12314 for the integration of video security cameras with all the strike-throughs? I mean, it just seems to me that,
So the 12304 will be reinstated as, if you look on page 1 of the bill, which brings back the discussion on the creation of the special fund. And then then when you go to page 2, where it would then talk about 14, the 1, 2, 3, 14, then that the controversial issue that Senator Ada alluded to will be deleted. A motion will be made to delete that, leaving the rest of the language in as section 2. Well, I understand, you're right. So maybe what we're going to do is we're going to take a recess and we'll just type out this whole new bill then without the strike-throughs to be able to see how it's going to look. Would that
yeah,
then be
because
okay?
otherwise it seems to me in section 1, you're amending 12304, and then in
Yes.
section 2, you're repealing it by striking through all of the provisions
Yes.
that you have in it,
So,
and it's just
well,
killing it.
yes,
It's
well-
either a
well-
new 12314 without using 12304 as your strike through,
Yes, I
because
understand.
otherwise legislative history is going to show that we've
Okay.
gutted 12304.
Yes, yes, Mr. Vice Speaker. So we're going to recess then to have that rewritten and include the new one, section 1, and what the new section 2 would be. Okay, so we recess. The legislature is back in session. Senator Respicio, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to a point of order on the matter of Bill 73-33. Certainly there's been a lot of discussion, and we're moving toward some consensus here. And as a result, I make a notwithstanding motion that the sponsor be allowed to substitute this version. It will be as substituted by the author and on the floor. He's cleaned up all the amendments so far, and that copies have been made, and this version is before each senator. But I have to do a notwithstanding motion to allow Senator Morrison to move the substitute version, and then if it's accepted, that will reset the speaking order and allow you to preside over this matter as if though it's fresh and something that we can start from this version. So I make that notwithstanding motion at this time.
Thank you very much, Senator. So on that motion then, no objections? So ordered. Thank you. Senator Morrison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 73-33 as substituted by the author on the floor.
To accept first this
Or
new...
to accept Bill
Okay, so
number
on
73-33.
the motion then to accept this new substituted version, no objections, and so ordered. And now with your motion then to place it on third.
Yes.
And then for this further discussions.
Yes, that's correct, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Would you like to explain now how the new bill looks? Okay. So on the motion then, this is a new substituted version from all the discussion that took place yesterday. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Senator Nicholas and then Senator Tamada.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a quick amendment on page 2, line 13, where it reads Section 8, integration of video security cameras authorized. I'd like to make an amendment to strike the words integration of video security cameras and replace it with the words development of implementation plan authorized.
Development of an implementation plan?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Development of an implementation plan authorized.
Authorized. Okay, on the amendment, which is on page 2, line 13, which would be like a title, really, so to speak. Instead of integration of video cameras, security cameras authorized, is to replace it with development of an implementation plan authorized. No objections? So ordered. Thank you, Senator. All right, Senator Tamada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a question of the author would yield on Section 2. Well, actually, on line 23 on page 2, regarding the rules and regulations, it says that the GFD, GPD, and the Office of the Attorney General shall develop the rules and regulations pursuant to the Administrative Adjudication Act. And I'm wondering if maybe this is where actually legal counsel can advise, that maybe really what we should say here is that they shall adopt rules and regulations pursuant to the Administrative Adjudication Act law.
Adopt rather than develop?
Right, yeah. So they develop all that, and then they have to do the public hearings according to AAA, and then you adopt it. Right? Okay, so then I'll just move then that on line 23 it should read, Attorney General shall adopt rules and regulations pursuant to the Administrative Adjudication law.
Okay, you may continue. That's the reason why I didn't want any cell phones to be, receiving messages or even receiving phone calls, because then it becomes disruptive. So, Senator, you may continue.
Oh, that was it. My motion was to on page 2, line 23, to substitute the words develop the with the word adopt. Shall adopt rules and regulations pursuant to the administrative adjudication law.
Senator Respicio on the amendment. Okay, we're going to take a brief recess.
So, Madam Speaker, I would like to...
One moment, I'm sorry. We're back in session. Senator Ada, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, I would like to withdraw my amendment and actually then proffer a different one along that same line.
Okay, so on that motion to withdraw, no objection, so ordered. Okay.
And so then I would like to move for the following amendment. Same page, line 2, page 23, should read, Attorney General shall develop the rules and regulations. Huh?
Yeah, page 2, line 23.
Line 23.
Okay, so it's page 2, line 23. I did too. I don't know where you guys are from. Page 2, line 23. You may proceed, Senator.
Okay. So line 23 then I would like to amend so that it reads, Attorney General shall develop the rules and regulations, comma, which shall be adopted pursuant to the administrative adjudication law. So that makes clear then that it's GFD, GPD, and Attorney General's office will develop the rules and regulations, and that those rules and regulations will then be adopted pursuant to the administrative adjudication law, which then, according to that law, they conduct the public hearings and all that, sends to the governor's office, and then it comes down to the legislature ultimately to be adopted either by default or by direct action by the legislature, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that's my amendment,
amendment,
Madam Speaker.
Okay, on the amendment, any objections to the amendment? Everyone understand? The Attorney General shall develop the rules and regulations which shall be adopted pursuant to AAA. Senator Espaldon.
Madam Speaker, I do not object to this.
Oh, okay.
To this. However, I do want to at least ask the question
Okay.
If you read it in its entirety, no later than 180 days, in essence, they have to develop the rules and then adopt it within 180 days, within 6 months in essence. And the question then, is that realistic? And I'm not sure who to ask on that one, because we know that there is a process in terms of, first of all, creating, developing the rules and regulations, and and that will take a certain amount of time, because it's not the only issue that these three agencies deal with and so again, their focus of whether or not they'll be able to do that within a reasonable amount of time, and then be able to put it up through and get it adopted pursuant to the AAA process. Again, I just have to ask the question: is that a realistic time frame to do it? 180 days.
Who would you like to address the question to?
And perhaps somebody who might be most familiar with the AAA process and developing. Perhaps the author of the bill would like to address
So,
this.
Senator, do you yield to the question? Oh, we're going to take I'm sorry.
Take a 1-minute recess.
Okay, 1 minute recess. The legislature is back in session. Senator Morrison, would you like to go ahead and respond to that question then?
Yes, Madam Speaker. I just briefly spoke with the legal counsel, and I cleared up that 180 days is sufficient to develop these rules and adopt them as well. Again, I was under the impression too that the AAA process has a built-in time frame with around 90 days. So, but legal counsel has clarified that this is ample time to develop these rules.
So, Senator, was he able to adequately respond to your question?
That is adequate, and I won't question that. I would imagine that in the worst case scenario, if they cannot meet the 180 days, that would come back to this body, and we can address it then. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome. On the motion now, the main motion, Senator Ada, I'm sorry, you still have the floor, you're right, from your, so on that amendment first, to adopt that develop and which shall be adopted. No objections? So ordered. Senator Ada, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, maybe if the author can yield and clarify, but I noticed that GFD, of course, is in the picture because they're the ones that really oversee the 911 funds, the 911 system, and all that. And then we have the Guam Police Department that's involved. And I'm just wondering, how come we don't include in here, for example, the airport police, because their area of responsibility covers all of Tizan, that Route 7A, I think it is, up to the airport mobile. And how come we don't include in this effort the Port Authority police, because their area of responsibility also covers the entire Cabras out there to where the fuel line is. I don't know, maybe there's a rationale for that as to why they're not being included.
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield to the question. Madam Speaker, if we could go up a bit on page 2, line 17, there's a line there that states, but not limited to. So I guess that also opens it up for other parties, such as the previous speaker mentioned, that will be allowed. I understand that it's not stated here. I am open to, if we need to add any additional folks that or agencies that should be in the picture, I'm open to an amendment that would also involve the Guam Police Department. Also, I spoke briefly with the Vice Speaker. There was also a mention of in the Office of Technology, and why would they not be included also in this, knowing that we're dealing with an IT initiative or going forward. But again, we've only included them up here in item A, it's because it's more focused on the IT side of things versus the rules and regulations. But I'm certainly open to any amendment.
Okay. Senator then was able to respond to your question, and he's open to an amendment.
Well, I recognize, I agree that, that catch-all phrase in there, entity shall include but not be limited to, and then we list off some agencies, and if we miss somebody, I guess it can be included in that general phrase. But then in subparagraph B, the tasking for the development of the rules and regulations seems to be really just focused, puts the responsibility solely on GFD, GPD, and Office of the Attorney General. I'm 601, half a dozen. The other, that line 17 covers that, so I won't be making any amendment. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, Senator. So on the main motion, those have not spoken yesterday or today, this is your opportunity. So then, before I call on the author to close, or so Senator, you can close, or you want to send it down?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to work with my colleagues to make Bill 73 a better bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for your contributions and your colleagues. I certainly want to state that I sometimes the passion gets the best of me of driving around and seeing what's happening out here in our community, and to see what tools that we could provide to our law enforcement authorities or our first responders out there. And this is something I and many of us here believe, as you do, Madam Speaker, with your creation of the Safe Schools Act. So I certainly know that we're all trying our best to find ways to not only catch these criminals, but at the same time looking at solutions where we can intervene with technology. And I believe that with the way things are evolving with emergency reporting system, that I think we've all come to understanding that this is some technology that we hope that the E91 system could also look to incorporating. So with that, Madam Speaker, I also want to thank the colleagues that, again, I really appreciate the contribution. So I'd like to include, Madam Speaker, as co-sponsor, Senator Tom Atta, Senator Tony Atta, Senator St. Nicholas, Senator Barnes, Speaker, yourself. And if there's no objections, Madam Speaker, if my other colleagues could be also added as co-sponsors.
So
I believe, Madam Speaker, I think we're all on the same page here,
Yes.
despite our passion, how we get there. But
ultimately, what happens is that when we're engrossed, then everybody's added on.
But
in
I know the chairman.
order.
The chairman asked me first, so.
but this is definitely then. So Tom Atta, Tony Atta, Senator Nicholas, Barnes, and myself. So. And then everybody else, I guess, falls out right after in alphabetical order.
I guess that's how it works. So.
On that amendment, no objections, so ordered. Thank you, Senators. On the motion to send Bill 73-33, that was substituted by committee and further substituted on the floor by the author, no objections, so ordered. Thank you, Senators. Moving back again to bills that have been set aside, and recognizing Senator Underwood on 70-33. So your motion then would be to accept, this new substituted version?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. After the concerns were raised 2 days ago and discussions we've had, I move to accept Bill 70-33 COR as further substituted on the floor and wish to discuss it.
On that motion to accept, no objections, so ordered. It's a motion now to then, I guess, place this new one on the third reading file.
Yes. Madam Speaker, I would like to go through the changes that we had made with this new bill. With the substitute
one
bill.
moment. Can you just please repeat what I just said is the motion then to place?
Okay.
And you would like to discuss?
So I would like,
Place.
I would like to make the motion to
Place.
move the substitute bill
Yes,
to the third reading file.
yes. And you would like to speak on
And
it?
may I speak on the new
You
substitute
may,
bill?
You may proceed, Senator.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I believe we have distributed the markup copy of the substitute bill, and I just want to go through that with my colleague. So the first change is actually on the title, because there was a concern that was raised that we're not clear that this is going to be an online registry. So the second to the last line of the title, we had added creation of an emergency online registry for individuals with special needs. So that's the first change. On the second page, we had redefined the first responders to make it clear that it is the first responder means an employee of an emergency service who is likely to be among the first people to arrive at and assist at the scene of an emergency, such as an accident, natural disaster, or terrorist attack. First responders typically include police, firefighters, paramedics, and emergency medical technicians. A certified first responder is one who has received certification to provide pre-hospital care in a certain jurisdiction. A community first responder is a person dispatched to attend medical emergencies until an ambulance arrives. We go to further down the same page, page 4, under B. The Guam Fire Department shall create and maintain a registry entitled the Emergency Online Registry for Individuals with Special Needs. And so we had included and maintain, and also online in that first, to be consistent with the new title. We also had added after the coded registry, which shall be integrated into the enhanced 911 emergency reporting system. Such registry shall be referred to by all emergency responders in the course of carrying out their duties. And that last sentence was based on the amendment that was proffered by the Good Senator from Dedido. On page 5, under D, we have noted here that the Guam Fire Department and the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities and other departments and agencies as determined by the Guam Fire Department shall meet at least quarterly to report the activities of the registry and shall submit a yearly report beginning January 1st, 2017. And so what is included there, and other departments and agencies as determined by the Guam Fire Department. On page 6, we have also included F, which was training. It was articulated during discussions that we need to ensure that the first responders are provided adequate training to deal with those with special needs. And so it reads that it's under F, training. The Guam Fire Department shall develop a training regimen for emergency responders specifically dedicated to individuals with special needs. The curriculum may be developed in collaboration with the Guam Community College and or the University of Guam to supplement any existing programs or in-service training. The training shall be formulated to include new employees as well as veteran employees with the Guam Fire Department who are defined as first responders in this act and may be conducted on a yearly basis. The training may also include participation and or inclusion of an individual with a special need, his or her parent, and or legal guardian. So we have, just a minute, hang on. Section 4 had become Section 3 because I think I skipped. Hang on. Okay, Madam Speaker, if I may refer everyone back to page 2. I'm sorry. I completely forgot to mention that on page 2, I deleted a whole section, Section 2, which had to do with DISIT, because that actually is addressed in a later section. So Section 2 is deleted, and then Section 3 had become Section 2. Okay. Now, if we can go back to page 7, we have Section 3, that's renumbered, and then we have Section 4. The Guam Fire Department may seek and apply for federal grants and or other grants available for funding opportunities to support the mandates of the Emergency Online Registry for individuals with special needs. We had included that because there was concern about the funding for the maintenance of the registry. Section 5 is renumbered, but we had indicated here that the sum of up to $150,000 is appropriated from the unappropriated fund balance of the Enhanced 911 Emergency Reporting System Fund to the Guam Fire Department as a start-up cost for the Emergency Online Registry for individuals and special needs. The Guam Fire Department may request in their budget for every fiscal year thereafter the funds necessary to maintain and support the mandates for the Emergency Online Registry for individuals with special needs. So I just want to be clear that the $150,000 that we're requesting with this bill is a startup. Section 6, effective date. The effective date for the inauguration of the Emergency Online Registry for individuals with special needs is January 1st, 2016. And that basically summarizes the changes that we've made with the substitute bill. And I believe everyone had been given a copy of the bill.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. So on the motion, I have Senator Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the work of the author to further enhance the bill with the substitute version. I do have a number of amendments that I'd like to go through just to assist in the enhancement of the legislation. Starting on page 5, line 8, after the word email. This section here basically requires that the fire department respond to the individuals who applied for the registry, but it doesn't specifically say who they're going to respond to. And so after the word email, I'd like to add the words, to the applicant indicating their inclusion in the registry.
So on page 5, line 8, after email, to add the words, to the applicant indicating their registry.
Indicating their inclusion in the registry.
In their inclusion in the registry. Okay. So has everyone had an opportunity to read it? Does anyone like to speak on the amendment? No objection to the amendment? Senator Torres?
Just a suggestion, should it be confirming?
Confirming their inclusion in the registry? Sure, that's fine.
So
To the applicant confirming their inclusion in the registry.
the app is, okay, so we're going to change indicating to confirming. So it would read, to the applicant confirming their inclusion in the registry. Any objections? No objections? So ordered. Senator, you still have the floor?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next amendment will be on page 6, line 13. To strike the word disability and replace it with the words special need.
On page 6, line 13, at the end, there, delete disability and replace it with special need.
Yes, it's consistent with the rest of the language throughout the bill.
Any objection? No objection, so ordered. Senator, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Same page, line 21. This paragraph here, I believe, is intended to allow the fire department to assign the duties of evaluating this program to DISIT. So I would just like to strike the word charge on line 21 because it might imply cost. Strike it with charge and replace it with the word assign. The Guam Fire Department may assign these duties.
On the amendment, to delete charge and add the word assign. Any objections? No objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And then on page 7, line 16, this is with respect to the appropriation from the E911 fund. And again, similar to a previous discussion that we had on another bill, I'm just concerned that we do not contain the appropriation authorization to a specific fiscal year. And so it's understood that this is intended to be a one-time startup cost appropriation. So if we could, after the word, the on line 16 is appropriated from the, and before the word unappropriated, if we could add fiscal year 2015.
From the fiscal year 2016, did you say that?
Yeah, this current fiscal year.
Is appropriated from the fiscal year 2016 unappropriated
2015,
fund.
Madam Speaker,
2015.
this current fiscal year.
2015.
Yes.
So add the words after the fiscal year 2015 unappropriated fund balance. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, any objections? No objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And then lastly, on page 7, on the effective date, I understand the intent of the author is to allow for the implementation to happen in 2016, but we still want the registry to begin getting developed immediately so that it's ready to roll out in 2016. So my first amendment would be to change the word inauguration on line 25 to implementation.
On the amendment to delete inauguration and replace it with implementation, no objections, so ordered. Thank you, Senator. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And then to add in the same paragraph a new sentence at the end that says, Development of the registry shall commence upon enactment of this act.
So then at the end of 2016, to add the words, development of the registry shall commence with this act.
Upon enactment of this act.
Oh, upon enactment of this act. Okay. Okay, does everybody understand? Any objections? No objections? So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And can you please make sure that we have copies to the clerks?
I will confer with the clerk.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the main motion, is there anyone who would like to speak on the main motion? Senator Tom Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I certainly commend the author of the bill for having made the changes that have been shown, and I think certainly it has, gone along much further. I do have some questions, and maybe if the author would yield to help me understand. Now, on page 2, we specifically identify on line 26 that this registry is an emergency online registry. I'm not clear whether that means I can get online and register, or whether this is a database that would be online that I can then put in the name or an address of someone, and the information comes up that at this address, you would find a person residing there with special needs.
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Madam Speaker, I would yield if I heard the question. I'm sorry, I was distracted.
Okay, so Senator Ada, can you repeat the question again?
So I just want to more clearly understand then, when we say emergency online registry, are we saying that this is a database that is online, so that, let's say, when a 911 call comes in to the 911 dispatch center, the dispatcher receiving the call can immediately then, type in the address or the location, or if it's a specific residence, and then the information will come up that at this residence there is as opposed to, going to an index file of cards. I just want that clarified.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I yield to the question. And yes, that's exactly what is envisioned with this online registry, that when the phone call comes in, and with its integration with the 911 system, that those who have registered, and if they are involved with the emergency and their address does come up, then the information pertaining to that individual would come up, inclusive of whatever special medical needs they might have, special needs, disability, whatever it is that they would include in the registry that would help the first responder.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On page 4, on lines 12 through 13, lines 12, it reads, the new addition there is, that this online registry shall be integrated into the enhanced 911 emergency reporting system. Such registry shall be referred to by all emergency responders in the course of carrying out their duties. And I think this was a provision that created some controversy yesterday, and was spoken to at length by someone who's actually been there as a first responder in a prior life, and it just, and I agree with that concern that was raised, that when that first responder gets the call, let's say the fire department, and he gets the call that there's an emergency at such and such a residence, location, and whatnot, the only thing going through this guy's mind, I presume, would be to safely get from that fire station to where that residence is, and when he gets there, to start, doing whatever actions needs to be done to get this individual to the closest medical facility. And so it would just seem that maybe to remove that, otherwise the way it's written right now is that, that ambulance driver, when he gets that call, now he has to get on there and says, I guess he has to now start querying this online registry to see if there's someone with the special needs, as opposed to, it seems that probably a better setup would be that when that 911 dispatcher gets that call, that there's an emergency at this residence, and at that residence there is an individual there with special needs. So really, that burden should be placed on the 911 dispatcher, and is feeding this first responder with information as he is en route to that emergency site. And so that first responder is processing all this information, and by the time he gets there, hopefully he would have gotten this information as well as other information that was being provided through the dispatcher by the residents, saying that things are really getting bad now, so this responder is getting prepared. So I would like on line 14, on page 4, line 14, such that line will then read, such registry shall be referred to by the 911 dispatcher and conveyed to first responders and conveyed to emergency responders in the course of carrying out their duties. That's kind of like just a quick off the cuff, and I guess I would need to kind of sit down to,
So what it is then is that on page 4, line 14, after the word by, shall be referred to by the 911 dispatcher and conveyed to the, and continue on, emergency responders in the course of carrying out their duties.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Wait. Yes, so on Senator Adet's, of course, amendment, Senator Underwood, you recognize, and then Senator Torres.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to clarify that, yes, the dispatcher, I think it's real good that we include the dispatcher, but we also want to ensure that the responder, because the scenario here is that the responder has a smartphone or a tablet, and when they actually get to the scene, that individual may have an identification that would be scanned, and it's a barcode in the States for the National Registry for people with special needs. Those who participate actually have a barcode, and there's an app that is downloaded for the responder so that their smartphone or tablet, all they do is scan that, and then the information comes up. I just want to make sure that we're not limiting this, the access to the information with that dispatcher, but that the responders actually have it's readily available for the responders as well as a direct link to that registry. So,
do you want to pose that question then to the mover of the amendment? Senator Tom Adet, would you yield to the question?
Well, I certainly have I did not intend in any way to limit this database or restrict the first responders. But I mean, hey, if they've got the time and the state of mind pull out their notepads and access the information, more power to them. All I'm saying is that this responsibility for referring to that registry should be really a responsibility of the 911 dispatchers. And if you recall yesterday's concern, and I think it's probably really better addressed by one of my colleagues here who was a first responder at one time, that these guys are in a different state of mind, the first responders, as they're making their way down. 911 dispatcher's got to be feeding him with information. Now, like I said, if he wants to access it, fine, more power to them. But the burden, the responsibility for referring to it and passing on that information should rest with the E911 dispatcher.
So Senator Underwood, was he able to respond to your question then? Okay. Senator Torres, on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My point of concern is the practicality of this. As I look to the bill and I look to the amendments, I think that the author of this piece of legislation did a very good job at addressing all the various concerns that we had. However, I am looking at the definition of a first responder, both a certified first responder and a community first responder. The previous speaker talked about amending possibly line 14 so that the registry shall be referred to by the 911 dispatcher and conveyed to the first responder. I believe that we need to, because this is a pilot program, we need to narrow it to something that is workable, something that can be started and then expanded. But as the discussion unfolds, it's, now we're talking about barcodes, we're talking about smartphones, we're talking about tablets, and I'm thinking, no way in my understanding of a first responder is that going to happen. I'd like to speak to a different type of community first responder that I have intimate knowledge of, because I have a child who is a nurse who from time to time has acted as a first responder when she's out on the road and sees a traffic accident or the like, or is on a plane and is called to assist with a passenger. We have those types of health professionals who can act as first responders. Now, the practical question becomes, unless they refer to 911 and wait for feedback, and in the meantime there's somebody there that really needs a nurse to put their hand on them, or a doctor, or an EMT who's off duty, or on their way to duty. Does this person have access to that short of the 911? I doubt it. And I think that there are confidentiality issues too that would prevent someone from accessing an online registry. So I think that it is very necessary, and I support the amendment that was proffered to limit this dissemination of information and referral of this list to the 911 dispatcher, because otherwise we're really talking about a scenario that doesn't exist. We have no technology right now, for people to have online access instantaneously. So it has to be, if there's going to be a dissemination of information from a registry that is held by a responsible party, that only that responsible party should be entrusted to divulge information from that list. Otherwise, I don't want to go back to the issue of liability, but honestly, we're opening up a can of worms here. And I would hate to put a law enforcement officer or a health professional who is a first responder in a position of liability, where they're now conflicted between their professional training as a first responder to this new law that says you must go through this avenue before you exercise your first judgment. I would hate to see a law enforcement officer, a man in blue, hesitate for a minute, for a second. We had one speaker previously talk to us about what it is to be a law enforcement officer, and their judgment call is approximately 1.7 seconds. Their reaction and the course that they take is determined in 1.7 seconds. It takes me longer to fudge through my purse to find my phone, my smartphone. So I really wonder that we're putting that officer in danger, his life in danger. We're putting the person who's injured, who needs help, in danger by delaying. So if we're going to have a system with a registry and a dispatcher who's responding, fine, so be it, let that happen. But don't tie the hands of that first responder and compromise their professional training and judgment because we're now requiring them to refer to a list. I think, quite honestly, you could endanger their lives, and I don't want to do that. And you can endanger the lives of the person who needs help because you're adding another layer that is going to cause delay. I know that when my daughter one time was in a situation where she was on her way to GMH for duty, and she was the first person to happen upon an accident that happened maybe 4 seconds before her. She saw the accident. She was the first responder. Her judgment says, get out of the car, do whatever you can, keep yourself in danger, but assist that person within your professional training and your ethical obligations to administer help where help is needed. That is what I want to refer to. We do need to have special consideration for special needs people, yes. We need to do that, but let's be responsible about it. So in summary, I said all that simply to say that I agree that we should limit this dissemination of information and information contained within the registry to the 911 dispatcher and not require other people to have to access it, because I don't think that that we have the technology either in the patrol cars or in their personal smartphones. If they don't download the app, what? And then we're just holding them liable? I don't think so. Let them do the jobs that they know what they're trained to do. I can't second guess what a nurse is trained to do or an EMT because I haven't been trained. But I trust them. I trust them to be the first responders and to exercise their best judgment to save my life and the life of a person with special needs. Because I believe that that is all encompassed in their professional certification. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. I have on the list Senator Nicholas and then Senator Blas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think the retiring speaker rose in favor of the amendment. I too rise in favor of the amendment. Is that okay? Yes, the evolution of this discussion was previously in the original iteration of the bill. It did not include a mechanism by which first responders will be able to access the registry. The amendment that was originally proffered by myself would have the first responder be the one to access it. But I believe that Senator Atta's proposed amendment to the current language now in the substitute bill is even more appropriate. At least at this juncture, given the technological limitations and the need for us to implement this system in a way that works with what we currently have in place as far as infrastructure is concerned. With this amendment, dispatch will be the ones who will be referring to this registry and telling the first responder who's on the registry, what their special need may be, and alerting them as to what they need to be mindful of when they arrive at the scene. And I think that's actually the best avenue at this point. It allows for the first responder to focus on responding. It allows dispatch to enhance their dispatch duties and their ability to contribute to the responding to the emergency. And I think it'll help the bill to achieve its objective without getting in the way potentially of the many things that are running through the minds of a first responder. So I thank Senator Atta for reviewing this language and for coming up with something that I think works better given the existing infrastructure that we have. And I'm hopeful that we can get this amendment passed and move the bill through to the third reading. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Senator Blas, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, yes, I'll stick to the amendment. Okay? Yes, sir. And I appreciate and I recognize and I thank the concern with regards to the amendment. If need to be between the lesser of two evils, I support the amendment. But Yeah, I'm the individual that's being referred to as being, okay, having the opportunity of being able to be a first responder. And let me just bring to light a concern that I have with regards to this whole thing. And maybe draw upon some of your experiences as well. You know, when you roll up to a scene, one of the things that you want to do is utilize all the pieces of equipment that you got. And sometimes as you roll up to the scene, you don't get all the information. You want to make sure that people can hear what you're doing and you can hear the information that's brought to you. And so one of the very first things that's done in ambulances and fire trucks and police cars and in even portable radios is we turn it up loud. What for? So that we can hear the information. One acronym, HIPAA. Okay? So we want to make sure that this information gets to the proper people. But you know, Madam Speaker, when you roll up to a scene, into an accident scene, one of the very first things you hear is the blaring, is the communication that's going on the radio. So can everybody else. There's a free app to get police scanners. Okay? So you want to know access? Let's go to police scanner. How are you going to keep the information confidential? Our 14-year at the scene. Please be advised, the individual in the house has got a special need. This is the individual identified in the registry. This person has that. Guess who now has all that information? Not just the first responder. Everybody else that's there and everybody else is listening to the scanner. Who's liable? Who's going to be liable now? Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Senator. Mr. Vice Speaker, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And the retiring speaker brings up a good point. Can we just leave this one part of who's responsible for the dissemination of the information to the development of the registry and the online regulations? I don't know if we need to really get down into the minutiae of how this thing's going to run.
Are you posing that as a question to anyone to
Well,
respond?
I'm just posing it as not saying that I'm opposed to the amendment, because I understand, as I was jokingly mentioned to one of the previous speakers, we were at a committee hearing, and one of the senators asked the police officer if you can just go onto your computer in the car and find all the record of everybody that comes up before you, and the police officer kept saying there was no such thing. It was not a PT.1. The person was a captain. And the senator kept saying, but I remember that both myself and the vice speaker were at Adeloop, and we were watching how this was done, and the police officer kept saying no such thing existed. I know I'm old, I may be forgetting things, so maybe I dreamt it. But I thought I saw it. And so I don't know if they have the ability to be able to do that, but I understand what the retiring speaker is saying, that there's a lot of very confidential information that will come up over the air, and I'm not sure whether or not people have thought about that, and I really do think that in the preparation of the regulations and the implementation of this, that should be left to those that are out there who understand that they have a HIPAA requirement that they've got to comply with, and let them make the decision on how this should be done.
Do you want to maybe come back with that, if you can look at page 5 on authorization to include exactly what you're speaking about? Because there is that memorandum of understanding that they could work on this, like you, as you say, for the implementation. Anyway, but think about it. I'll come back to you if you like. But on the amendment itself then, Senator Ada, to close on your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And, after listening to some of the comments that were made earlier, I think I would like to make an amendment to the amendment such that it would read that the registry shall be referred to by the E911 dispatcher and conveyed to first responders that they are actively and directly in communications with. So that would address the concern of an earlier speaker about the nurse who's driving to work, comes upon the scene of an accident, and just stops, gets out of her car to provide necessary assistance or whatever. And so, of course, she wouldn't have access, at that time to that registry. But I think we're talking really about that situation in more times than not, where the dispatcher is now talking to the EMT who's, in the advance ALS car, going to the scene. So, again, we're narrowing it down. We have this registry. There's information in it. That 911 dispatcher has got to convey that information to the first responder that he or she is actively and directly communicating with. Turn left here at that place. When you get there, there is a person there with special needs. This does not, of course, address the concern that was raised by the other speaker about confidentiality, that, at this residence, there's a person there with special needs. That, quite frankly, I don't know how to address that. And it probably could be addressed by my other colleague as we move along. But I would like to make that amendment to my amendment, adding then, or maybe it'd be easier if I just withdraw my amendment and proffer the new amendment here. Would that be possible?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so then I would like to withdraw my amendment.
And that withdrawal, no objections, so ordered.
And then the new amendment then would read on page 4, line 14, that line would read, registry shall be referred to by, and then add the words, the E911 dispatcher, and conveyed to the first responder that the dispatcher is actively and directly in communications with.
Is actively
and directly.
And directly.
Yeah, so there's this online, on the air dialogue going on between the dispatcher and that responder.
Okay, on the amendments, was everybody able to get it down? On page 4, line 14, where it says referred to by, then add the words, the E911 dispatcher, and conveyed to the first responder that the dispatcher is actively and directly in communication with. Senator Frank Blas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, again, if I have to choose between the two, I support the amendment because there's a couple of things too. Please, let's not fall under the assumption that all emergency response calls come from the E911. Okay, that there are times that the emergency dispatch calls will be coming from the precincts, will be coming from other sources. So I was concerned initially about, again, the response that was necessary. If the call came from the precinct, not in communication with E911, would then mandate that precinct would have to call E911, further exacerbating, a quicker response. That said, Madam Speaker, while I support the amendment so that it provides a little bit more clarity, I have to agree with the previous speaker. Maybe this is something we shouldn't even be touching. Again, no matter what, it still comes back down to the root of an issue, a concern that I've got, is the dissemination of the information and who's going to be privy to it. Okay? And I don't know whether us continuing to entertain this section is somehow empowering, and some are saying that, okay, despite that HIPAA concern, despite the concern with regards to the confidentiality of information, this is the result. I don't know and I don't want to go down that road. I really don't want to go down that road. And Madam Speaker, I'm going to take this basis on experience. Okay? I've had on a number of occasions having to deal with individuals. Obviously, in my prior life, I've had to deal with individuals who have substance abuse problems, and their substance abuse problems led to other medical issues. It became very necessary to be able to have a briefing, but we had to be very careful as to how we were able to disseminate the information. That said, though, Madam Speaker, those were non-emergent at the time. We were able to prepare for this. We're talking about an emergency situation now. And my fear is as this goes on and the discussions come on, you're going to have first responders going to say, how do we deal with this? Whoa, I don't want to do that. Okay? So I know that I'm stretching, I'm going outside of the bounds and then as far as the amendment, but if we have to deal with the amendment as it is right now, I support it, but I have to continue to bring up that underlying concern that I had with regards to what we're trying to amend. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Vice Speaker?
Again, I rise to just say, maybe we should leave this to the development of the regulations. Because if we now start putting in that it shall be dispatched, the dispatcher shall provide it to only the person that they're in communication with, maybe sometime in the future, in another, after I'm gone, we'll have what the mover of the bill thought is going to happen here, and our police officers will have smartphones and machine pads, or as another senator had asked, that you can pick it up on your computer in your cars. But if we're going to start limiting it to just an E911 dispatch is the only one that's going to be able to get it out there, hopefully at some point we'll develop whatever is going to be developed into some way of disseminating the information without violating HIPAA and without violating everything else. But I think if we just leave it without having to get so specific on who's responsible for what, let them write the regulations and the implementation plan.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak on the amendment? There are two individuals who spoke on the amendment, but yet referring to something else. Was waiting for an amendment for that. That's why I'm allowing you some time. I will recognize you if you want to add a new section to that. I know there's a section for the authorization of a memorandum of understanding, but there's nothing in the section, no sections here about the development of and implementation of a plan. So, but if you want to create that section, then you have the opportunity to do that, and I can recognize you. But specifically to the other amendment, if there's anybody else who do, Senator Spoutdon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm still a little puzzled. The mover of this amendment withdrew an amendment earlier, which I totally agreed with in terms of keeping it short and sweet and to the point. And the argument was that the way it read initially is that such registry shall be referred to by all emergency responders in the course of carrying out their duties. The mover of this amendment then moved to change it, arguing that the registry shall be referred to by the 911 dispatcher. And I agree with that because, again, I believe that during a 911 call that the dispatcher would once their rules and protocols are all in place, the dispatcher would probably ask, is there a person with special needs involved in the situation? I would imagine that would have to be part of the protocol to make this registry viable. Now we're saying, so that was withdrawn, and now we're saying such registry shall be referred to by the 911 dispatcher and conveyed to the first responders that the dispatcher is actually in communication with the registry, is actively in communication with...
Actively and directly in communication with.
The registry?
With.
Oh.
Yeah, so with. It means with the dispatcher.
So the registry shall be referred to by the 911 dispatcher and conveyed to the first responders that the dispatcher is actively in communication.
And directly in communication with.
And directly in communication with who?
With the dispatcher.
The dispatcher is going to convey to the first that the dispatcher is
so those are the
actively
two that are communicating.
Well, I'm sorry, Madam Speaker, that's where I need a little clarity. Because if the dispatcher is telling the first responders that the dispatcher is actually actively and in communication with
the first responder.
But why would they have to tell the first responder that they're actively in communication with the first responder? And that's why I think we need more clarity.
Would you like the author of the amendment to respond to your question?
Well, the answer is yes. I mean, if that is and I may have written it down incorrectly, but yes, I would like to ask perhaps a little more clarity on that.
Okay.
On that
Senator
amendment.
Ada, do you yield to the question?
Well, I guess I made the amendment to the First Amendment based on the comments that were made by another speaker about how, there's an app that everybody's monitoring what the dispatcher is sending out. So I guess I was just trying to be more specific about that. I'm assuming, and again, here's the problem here. I don't know what that interaction is like, whether the 911 dispatcher is talking to the driver of ambulance number 1, and all the other ambulance drivers are monitoring, but that dispatcher is talking to that one ambulance driver. That that ambulance driver number 1 says, "Okay, I'm responding, I'm en route," and the dispatcher then should be the one to convey that information to ambulance driver number 1 that at that location is a special needs individual.
Senator, did he answer your question? You want to ask another question?
It's not really clear in terms of the amendment itself, and I have problems with it because initially this whole conversation started with who would be responsible for looking at the registry. The way the original the bill as introduced or substituted is written, such registry shall be referred to by all emergency responders in the course of carrying out their duties. And the concept was it shouldn't be the emergency responders because they have, they're on their way to the emergency. It should be the dispatcher. And again, I agree with that. And the dispatcher again would then, say if there, tell the emergency responder if there's any relevant information concerning the victim or somebody who may be hurt. But to add on the extra language, I'm not really certain what it does. It shall be referred to by the dispatcher and conveyed to the first responder that the dispatcher is actively and something in communication with.
Senators, why don't we take a brief recess?
Or maybe if we can have
Yes,
this written
if we
out so
can.
we could,
Yeah, you're right.
maybe I just
okay,
didn't.
so let's take a brief recess.
Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Senator Espaldon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment. And what I would like to do is have the amendment to the amendment now read on line, starting line 13, end of line 13, going on 14. Such registry shall be referred to by the E911 dispatcher and any relevant information conveyed to the first responder, period. Okay. And that basically, Mr. Speaker, will, in essence, the thing we're trying to identify who would be responsible to refer to the registry when a 911 call is placed. And it takes it off the shoulders of the first responder, and it places it on the burden on the dispatcher when they receive the call of 911. And then that 911 dispatcher will then provide any relevant information to the first responder who is on his way to the scene.
Thank you, Senator Espaldon. On the Espaldon amendment to the amendment. Any senator? Any objection? On the main motion? On the main motion, I see Senator Addett, then Senator Rodriguez. Any others on the main motion?
I was speaking on the main
Oh,
motion.
you're still
when I made
on the main
my
motion.
amendment. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have it here. It's Senator Rodriguez and then Senator Blas. Okay.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I go to page 7, and I still, I still have concerns about now tapping into the 911 fund for the sum of $150,000 without. I mean, it's kind of like we arbitrarily took a figure out and said $150,000 should be enough to fund the startup cost. My understanding is that we really don't know what that startup cost would be. But be that as it may, I'm going to go give the benefit of the doubt that $150,000 would be sufficient to start up this data registry and provide the training to the first responders and all that. But now the concern that I have is the language on page 7, line 20, where we say that the Guam Fire Department may request in their budget for every fiscal year thereafter the funds necessary to maintain and support the mandates of the emergency. So in essence, by saying that they may request, we're basically saying that, and we all know that the budget that comes down here does not always reflect what the department really needs. So if he's going to add up all the requirements that he's going to need on that budget, it's going to be, just pick a number, $10 million, right? To run his department, to make the vehicle replacements that are needed, to fund this data registry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when he goes to BBMR says, sorry, the pie is not big enough to give you the $10 million you're asking for. You're only going to get $9 million. And so, of course, the department's going to go back, sharpen their pencils. We obviously need to pay our personnel. We obviously need to, replace the ambulances. We obviously need to do these to perform the mission that GFD is mandated to do. And so the concern that I have then is, well, so he may request it, but that's probably going to be the first thing to go. So I'm concerned that we're going to put in this $150,000, and I don't know, maybe by then, maybe by the next budget cycle, they'll find some federal grants to keep this program going. But, I'm just concerned that it's going to be a nice startup and that's probably the last we'll see of it. So was that $150,000 wasted? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe we can find some use for it. But that causes me great concern that we would have expended that $150,000 and there's no assurance of being able to sustain the program afterwards. So just as was raised, the concerns that were raised with the surveillance camera, that, right now we have this concept of this program, but we haven't really gotten down to the details of it to really know if $150,000 is going to do it. So those are my comments on the bill, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Addett. Senator Rodriguez and then Senator Bloss on the main motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. Mr. Speaker, I really listening intently to the discussions on this legislation, and I support and agree with the concept of the legislation. I just have some concerns as well that I'd like to be able to discuss and perhaps make some amendments. And please forgive me if this was already discussed, and maybe the author would yield on the definition of first responders. You have here an employee of emergency service who is likely to be among the first people to arrive at and assist at the scene of emergencies such as an accident, natural disaster, terrorist attack. First responders typically include police, firefighters, paramedics, and emergency medical technicians. And then it goes on to state a certified first responder is one who has received certification and so on. And then the next sentence is a community first responder is a person dispatched to attend medical emergency until an ambulance arrives. But based on the discussions we've been having, and as I just go through the legislation, I don't, unless I'm missing it, maybe you can point it out to me, I don't see where a certified first responder or a community first responder is ever mentioned or used in this registry or in the use of the registry. So is there a reason why those two were included and the initial definition of a first responder was amended? If I can just pose that question.
The author yield.
Thank you. I yield to the question. Mr. Speaker, we actually had amended this as we thought would be better. It would better define the first responder to be more specific. But, first responder, we can stop, the definition can stop right there with after the word medical technician. What we were trying to do is actually differentiate a first responder that is dispatched from one who has not been dispatched and may be, as described by a former speaker to this bill, that it would be like somebody who's just driving by and would be helping an individual who is in need. So our effort here was to be more specific on the definition.
Does that assist you, Senator Rodriguez?
Okay, I'll process that in my mind. And the other issue, or not issue, but what I'd like to bring up, Mr. Speaker, is that when we discuss the legislation, I think we seem to always reference first responders or calls of emergencies that deal with a need for a medical need for an EMT to arrive. But as I'm aware, Mr. Speaker, from just constituents who do approach myself as well, is that emergency calls happen for other situations other than when there is a need for an EMT, to be there to respond, and the need is for an officer, a law enforcement officer, to respond. And so, I think in those situations, before that officer responds to that call, I think it's very beneficial for that officer to know, what he's dealing with, and if there is indeed a special needs individual in that property. And so, that's one thought that I have in my mind that we keep on referencing. It's assuming that it's always going to be an EMT that is needed to respond, but that's not the case, Mr. Speaker. And so, with this substitute version, one point I like here, one provision that I believe was not included in the one before this was training. If we're going to have this registry, we're going to know now what our first responders, law enforcement officers are dealing with. We have to ensure that those who respond are trained. And so I'm glad that on page 6 there is a provision. Just like I said, I don't know if I missed it, but I don't believe I did. So this is a new provision. So, which is good, is that it said the Guam Fire Department shall develop a training regimen for emergency responders specifically dedicated for individuals with special needs. The curriculum may be developed in collaboration with the Guam Community College or University of Guam. And then goes on, the training shall be formulated to include new employees as well as veteran employees within the Guam Fire Department. And this is where I have a concern with, is that, we're talking about first responders. The legislative intent says it's for first responders, law enforcement officers, to be able to access. I think the bottom line is for whoever it is that is, when you call 911, whoever it is that is sent to that call needs to be trained in responding. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to propose an amendment on line 4 of page 7 to strike the words within the Guam Fire Department and just have it read, the training shall be formulated to include new employees as well as veteran employees who are defined as first responders in this act. And I'd like to change or do I need to do that first? Or can I just do the whole?
Let's take it individually. Let's just take that. On the first Rodriguez amendment to strike Guam Fire Department from line 4. Page 7. And the words being struck within the Guam Fire Department. So it shall read, veteran employees who are defined as first responders in this act, and not limiting it to just that department. Any senator wish to be heard on this Rodriguez amendment? And Senator Blas? No? Okay. No objection?
Thank you,
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on line 5, it says here that that these trainings may be conducted on a yearly basis. If this legislation calls for an evaluation of the registry every year, I think the training as well should also be conducted yearly. Because if after the first year, like on page 6, on line 6, evaluation is that the Guam Fire Department shall conduct a yearly evaluation of the registry. And so if we're having them evaluate this and make any changes to the operation of the registry, then it just makes sense that the training also be conducted yearly, so that if there are indeed any changes or revisions that are made or proposed, that the training also is consistent with that. And so I like to strike the word may to shall on line 5 of page 7.
On that second amendment, amending the word may to shall. Senator Ada.
I'm just, I'm just concerned that, you know, when we're saying things like you shall conduct on a yearly basis, I mean, does this fall in that category of the unfunded mandates? And if it's not funded, then, you know, they don't have to do it. I mean, I thought I was familiar that there was something to that effect. Which has the same effect as you may. Well, you're saying I don't really have to, so I won't. So I just bring that up by when we say shall, and if we don't, you know, somehow, if it's an unfunded mandate, because now we're talking about not just GFD, we're talking about GPD, we're talking about whoever else that's. So I just raised that as a point of concern.
Thank you very much. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I completely agree, you know, but if we're saying we're going to do this, and we're saying in this legislation that they shall evaluate this program on a yearly basis, then we need to be consistent. Is that if any changes are made or anything is updated, then the training. I mean, if we're saying that the training is done once and they may do it because if they have funding, if for some reason they do request funds in their budget, that they'll do it. You know, I think it's something we would need to be concerned about. So,
I think Senator Blas might have.
Okay.
Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm compelled to be able to have to jump into the conversation, and I appreciate, you know, the necessity here with regards to the training and stuff. But, you know, a lot of times when we make amendments to one portion of the bill, it has an adverse and a consequential effect to another portion of the bill here. Talking about $150,000. Now, if this whole process, I just need to caution that as we move along this thing, that's going to have to be revisited.
The 150 is only for the startup.
Understood.
The department will ask for annual appropriations.
You know how many first responders there are in the first year? So you know, while I understand and I recognize I need to bring this up here, it's going to cause us then to have to go back. I mean, to go and to look at, okay, so what is this figure now? Okay, so I just need to bring that point there. With regards to whether or not the training is done on an annual, biannual, triannual. Okay, so I need to bring that up. Thank you.
Senator Rodriguez, you still have the floor. The comment was already made by Senator Blas about the possibility that the cost.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to our colleagues for their input as well. I still just feel, Mr. Speaker, that if we're going to do it, if we're going to say we're going to do this, take on this task, implement a registry, then we got to do it right. And it doesn't, to me, it wouldn't make any sense if we have a registry and we don't train our first responders. That, you know, those are the concerns I receive from our constituents. Is that, you know, we, you know, my son, you know, he was treated unfairly. You know, he's a special needs individual. When the cops came, you know, he was treated unfairly. And the cops, you know, to their defense, they don't know that this individual was a special needs individual, you know. And so now that we're saying we're going to have a registry where our first responders are going to have access to know that these individuals, you know, have special needs, then they got to, you know, we got to give them the tools to be able to be trained, to be able to respond properly to those incidents. So, you know,
How about rather than yearly, as recommended by the evaluation? If it's recommended. But
you know, I mean, that's, you know, that could be some, you know, could be a compromise, I suppose. But then, you know, when we're talking about here now, saying, you know, we know already that we're going to be short. 150 is just for the startup. We know we don't even know how we're going to continue this moving forward. I don't want the evaluators to be able to take a look at this and say, you know what, we're making these changes, but you know, we don't have the resources to do another training. You know, and you know, it's our human nature, right? It's just to say, okay, well, I think we can just, you know, it can still be covered within the training they had.
Okay, so there's an amendment that's still on the floor that hasn't been addressed. Senator Underwood, did you wish to speak on the Rodriguez amendment, may to shall? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of that amendment where we change may to shall. And my support is really based on what I know about the complexity of individuals with special needs. I have worked over the past 30 years as an educator, and my area primarily had been in special education. So I've had the experience in working with individuals with special needs or with disabilities. This amendment I welcome, because the complexity of providing adequate services for our individuals with special needs and dealing with their ever-changing needs actually is something that is very specialized and one that requires continuous training and education. And so I rise in support of that, and I thank the author for pointing that out. As a matter of fact, during the roundtable discussion that we held a couple of weeks ago, one of the parent representatives had expressed the concern that the training might just be a one-shot deal. And as an educator, I do know that training has to be continuous if we are to actually ensure that everyone is prepared to deal with the needs of our population that has a disability. So again, I rise in support of this, and I thank the author for pointing that out.
Thank you. On the Rodriguez amendment, any other senator wish to be heard? I don't see any hands. Are there any objections to the Rodriguez amendment? Any objection to the Rodriguez amendment? Senator Rodriguez, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to our colleagues for that discussion. The final amendment I have, Mr. Speaker, is on page 7, the same page, line 6. It says here, the training may also include participation and or inclusion of an individual with special needs, his or her parent, and or legal guardian. And again, Mr. Speaker, I believe that instead of saying they may include an individual with special needs, I think it should be a requirement. I think, it would be that person who would really have the, or that person's caretaker that would really have the first-hand knowledge and experience of what it is to be able to live in the shoes of our of our people who do have special needs. And so, I would like to be able to change the word may to shall, and to also add after legal guardian, Mr. Speaker, and the director of DISID or his and her designee. DISID, as we all know, is the is like our state agency, really, who deals with trying to ensure that the lives of our individuals with special needs and with disabilities are really protected and advocated for. And so I think it's just appropriate that the director of DISIT, although I know that in some other sections of the legislation refers to DISIT's involvement, I think, but in the specific mention of training, this specific provision, I believe that that DISIT should have a role in this as well.
Thank you. This third Rodriguez amendment is to change may to shall and add at the end of the sentence the DISIT director or his or her designee. It'll be line 6 and 8. In 6, to change may to shall. Maybe we should split this. All right, on just the may to shall on line 6. Any objection to the may to shall? You wish to speak? Do you wish to explain why?
Mr. Speaker, I object to changing that from may to shall, especially when we are talking about the participation and or inclusion of an individual with a special need, that they would have to be forced to go through training. We're talking about individuals here whose needs may be that they may be bedridden, they may be as severe as that they are not.
Maybe some of us are reading this differently from the way that you wrote it. I thought that this was to say that the training for the first responders, they would have to be exposed to persons with special needs.
Yeah.
It seemed to me that the Massachusetts example that I sent you specifically talked about the fact that the individuals and the parents with special needs were part of the training they're being trainers, not that they're being trained.
Oh, okay. So, okay. So, I interpreted this as the training may include the participation that they're not being trained. They're not, the way this reads is that the training, the parents or the individual, the parents who have lived with these individuals with special needs have lived with them and have had that training. And so to force them to participate in the training every year, or for that individual with a special need to go through the training themselves.
I really do think that you may not, we're interpreting it differently, all right? I know you may have been the one that wrote this, but I'm just wondering whether or not you understand what you wrote. It seems to me that it's important for these first responders to be exposed to an autistic child, to be exposed to a Down child so they know what a Down child looks like. And I thought the example that I sent you from Massachusetts, the news story, was that to have a Down child or an autistic child in the training with these officers so they know what they look like, how they react, how they respond, and their parents can explain to the first responders, my son does not hear or does not respond to your calling, Jimmy, are you there? Please understand, or the looks blank, he's not blank. Okay. Are you withdrawing your objection?
Okay, I am withdrawing my objection, but actually in any type of training we shouldn't have to include who should be involved in the training itself. I mean, what the training encompasses. The training for individuals who are involved with the training I received as an educator for special education students had included all of this. The curriculum included this.
But if you never met a person who had special needs, would that be different?
But the training included the individuals with special needs. That's what I am saying, that the curriculum for training special education or those who will respond to those includes this. Includes the individuals already to be a part of that training so that they would know exactly what.
And I think what Senator Rodriguez is asking for is that it be mandated that in order for the first responders to understand what it's like to deal with an autistic or a Down child, that they be at the training so that the first responders knows what a Down child looks like or how an autistic child responds. And to have his or her parents there so that they can explain, these are the special needs of my child. If you're going to treat him, understand, don't come up to him in a certain way because he'll turn around and hit you. Yes. All right. There's still an objection by...
Point of information, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank you. It's like you took my brain and you read it, and you articulated it very well, better than I would, I think. But yeah, I just want to affirm that is exactly my understanding of this sentence, and that's why I wanted it to be mandatory instead of may. And so that's just affirming what you just said.
Did you wish to speak?
Thank you very much. I wasn't able to catch all the conversation, but the registry is voluntary. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, and because there are individuals, of course, who may not want, anyone to know that. Maybe it's something they're still dealing with. Maybe they have not even accepted the fact that they are, they do have some special needs. We're not just talking about physical type of needs, but there's others, emotional and mental needs as well. So to force now or to say and to mandate those individuals themselves to participate, or say that they must be part of the training, again is going against the registry. We just did the mandating that everyone, the first responders, the emergency responders,
I think, again, you may have missed some of the discussion. Can we take a recess so I don't have to say this over?
The legislature is back in session. Senator, there's a differences, of course, in the discussion of that particular amendment proffered by Senator Rodriguez. So I like for us to recess to discuss that, and at the same time do our recess lunch, but we need to be back. Rather, we shall return at 1:30. So we're going to recess now until 1:30.